Welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to discuss JavaScript function constructors. So, as we've seen with JavaScript objects, you can create them on the fly. Here I create a user object, and I define it at the same time. So, I say up here Java has no concept of class. There is actually a class keyword in Java now. It's a relatively recent addition. We're going to discuss it next time. But that keyword class doesn't introduce the same type of concept. There's still not an idea of a fixed template, and then that the class creates in Java, and then an object that's an instantiation or a creation based on that template. So there's no concept of that. But we see here JavaScript really has a fluid idea of an object. Here's one that's created with two properties. You could also add methods here. You can also add properties after the object is created just by naming them, properties and methods, and hook it into these objects. You can take properties and methods away with the delete keyword. So a very fluid idea of what an object is, not based on a fixed template. And suppose, here's where I create an array of them, right? So over and over again. But suppose I need thousands. This gets tedious. But not just tedious, but error prone. So if I really need the same uniform properties and styles, so later on I can depend on those properties and methods being there. If I create every object that I have on the fly, it's really hard to get to that. Making sure that this property is really here, making sure this method is really here becomes difficult because anyone can make a mistake. And I have to say that this on-the-fly method of defining objects is really suited for a UI, for a language that's just focused on a user interface, where you're not dealing with thousands of objects, but with an interaction with the user during that session. On-the-fly object creation really matches well with that. When does it break down? When you connect your browser to a server that's feeding you information. Give me a list of nen users who are enhancers with a strength greater than 7. Now, not one user will come back, but many, hundreds if not thousands. And you want a consistent way of creating a JavaScript array out of the object data stream that's coming from the server. You need some other mechanism that can formalize that process. And JavaScript's first answer to that was the idea of a function constructor, as shown on line 32 here. Not that different from a normal JavaScript function. And it depends a lot on the programmer doing it properly. So I have function, capital N name, that's by convention, to note out that this is meant to be a function constructor, and then a list of parameters, and then you attach properties that come in through the parameters to this. That's the style. Notice there's no return statement here, and there's no return statement because new must be used in conjunction with the function constructor. You're not just calling it and expecting a return value. If you just call it, it will work, but the return value will be undefined. So you must use the function constructor in conjunction with the new keyword. The new keyword does 4 things. Number 1, it creates an empty object. Number 2, it sets this to the empty object. Number 3, it adds an implicit return this statement to the function constructor. And 4, adds a proto for prototype inheritance. So here's a weakness. It doesn't insist, JavaScript, the language, does not insist that this function be called with new, even though it really doesn't do the job it's supposed to do without the keyword new in front of it. And you can see we've established a pattern here that looks very much like the sister and brother languages of JavaScript, where we have new and then seemingly a class name, and what we get back is the object of that type. So not really a constructor, more of a function, but has constructor-like characteristics in conjunction with the new keyword. So it has some weaknesses, but it gives JavaScript programmers a way to have a formalized way of creating new objects, especially useful in the context of when you need to create hundreds or thousands of the same object type. Thank you.